Thank you for joining us for the 11th APFSD site event on meaningfully engaging youth in climate governance. My name is Joshua. I'm currently the Youth Meaningful Engagement and Climate Governance Consultant at the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub, and I'll be your MC and moderator today. So before we start, please take note some of the codes of conduct to be followed. So first, please ensure that your audio is muted at all times. Switching your camera is optional, but we encourage you to do so. Only the main speakers will be on the screen today, and this event will be recorded for documentation purposes. So for those who just joined in, thank you again for taking your time in attending today's site event. We greatly appreciate your support. And now sit back and relax as we will begin the event very, very shortly. With that, I would like to invite Ms. Aneta Nikolova, Environmental Affairs Officer and Climate Policy Lead for UN Economic and Social Commission for Pacific, for her opening speech. The floor is yours, Ms. Aneta.
Thank you very much, Joshua, and thank you to all the friends and colleagues with whom we are organizing this side event. It is my honor here to represent ESCAP, and to be honest, this is the culmination of our fantastic partnership that we have initiated a couple of years ago, and we see that we have moved forward very well, very solidly, as a team of UN agencies that are supporting and trying to bring youth voices louder and louder in our intergovernmental processes. And just for those of you who do not know what is ESCAP, this is the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, and we consider this the only intergovernmental platform where governments meet and discuss policies for the future of the region, and climate action is in the core of our work as well, right? And of course, with all our partners from the United Nations Issues-Based Coalition on raising climate ambition in the region. And a couple of our partners are here. In addition to UNDP, I see Julie from UNFCCC, the Regional Coordination Office. So we are very happy to be together. And I would now stop here. And I also congratulate our Youth Climathon winners to be part of this discussion as well in this side event. And I stop here and I'll give the floor to the other partners to give their opening.
All right, thank you very much, Anita, for your opening speech. And yes, later, Carbon Face Out, one of the popular award winner, will be presenting their point. But before that, while Miss Akiko is still preparing for her to enter the Zoom room, I would like to invite Miss Fleur. Miss Fleur is a speaker from the UNFCCC. She is the ACE Young and Gender for the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change speaker, and she'll be also be doing the opening speech. So, Ms. Fleur, the floor is yours. Oh, she got disconnected. All right. While we're waiting for our opening speakers, perhaps we can play the video for UN ESCAP. If that's ready. Yes. Thank you very much, Din Long.
Climate change is not a fight for power. It's a fight for survival.
Asia and the Pacific is at the forefront of climate impacts, and youth who have contributed little to causing climate change, disproportionately suffer its impacts. 60% of global young people aged 15 to 24 live in the Asia and the Pacific region. However, they remain largely marginalized in climate action and climate governance processes. The lack of youth engagement represents a significant missed opportunity for achieving climate goals. Young people are positive agents of change. Their valuable potential for accelerating climate action should be nurtured and invested in. For its part, the United Nations is committed to meaningful youth engagement and aims to lead by example. At the opening of the 79th ESCAP Commission session, ESCAP welcomed two youth representatives, Kim Allen and Prim Wong, who spoke in front of high-level delegations. Their statement represented the voices of thousands of youth from Asia-Pacific countries who took part in preceding consultations. Among their calls, young people in Asia and the Pacific seek to be involved in the political processes of climate action, such as nationally determined contributions. To do this, support and opportunities must be provided to young people. Meaningful youth engagement activities include education and capacity building, public and political processes, fostering youth-led action such as social entrepreneurship, and other action for climate empowerment elements. As we fight against climate change, bear this question in mind. How can we engage you, work with you, and empower you to address the climate emergency? The future of Asia and the Pacific lies in the ability of young people to participate meaningfully today. Let us sustain and enhance the momentum of youth engagement in climate action and climate governance processes.
All right, thank you very much from that video from UNESCAP. While Miss Fleur has internet difficulty and Miss Akiko is still trying to go into the speech. So while we wait for that, I would like to invite our carbon phase out team to share their points for today. I've already give the permission to Luke to present. And yeah, the floor is yours, carbon phase out.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Thank you everyone for coming here and for the invitation, Yakap, and also to Miss Aneta. Thank you for your opening remarks to your team Carbon Phase Out. Recently won the Populatar Award in Youth Climathon, and we're here to present Gaia and its business in climate action development, most especially in the Philippines. So let's start. So what's the rationale behind Gaia? So next slide, please. Ecotourism industries produced all kinds of waste. These waste damage ecosystems that power the tourism sector in the Asia Pacific. The tourism sector here in the Asia Pacific is one of the main key drivers of its GDP. Now, the question that we wanted to solve is, we want to travel the world, we want to see it, but at the same time, we have to protect it. Now, how can we do that without a platform to do so? So we introduced to you, next slide, please, our Greenhouse Aviation Indicator application, your sustainable trip guide to help you and tourists monitor carbon footprint and waste that in effect damage to ecosystems in order to preserve the very tourism sector that power here in the Asia Pacific. So what does Gaia do? It calculates your carbon footprint across all value chains, and it identifies the low emissions options suitable for you. Now, it also helps you connect deeper with nature as it gives you information on biodiversity hotspots, next slide please, and air quality information. So more than that, it also gives you the opportunity to connect with like-minded tourists to share tips and tricks in order to together inspire each other to further champion sustainability. So now we move on to the inclusive packages, care of Luke.
So in this roadmap, from Bangkok to Singapore, users can already track their emissions before the trip so that during they can select travel, flight, transport, hotel, tourist activities. Users will receive a post-trip analysis indicated here as the cost and the overall impact on the environment that he or she will purchase. And she or he will also have carbon credits that could incentivize their actions and some reviews from app developers and tourists that have already purchased the same services. So now for our implementation plan, we plan in 6 phases: a conceptualization and market research for 5 months, a development for 1 year, and a pre-launch dated for June 2025, and a launch for January 2026. We will monitor the growth and scale the app throughout the post-launch.
All right, thank you so much for that, Luke. Now, as an application, of course, you want to be profit generating. So for business models, we'll be using a business to consumer model as a mediator between application users and company users. So we aim to break even by year 3 with projected cost. The whole business model and revenue generation graph of ours is currently in development with experts in order to help us reach its full ability. Now, there's a saying that make polluters pay. So we want that kind of thing to be implemented also. So Gaia will have this kind of special option that charges $3 per 100 grams of carbon footprint emitted. However, not required. It just gives an opportunity for users, to give back to these ecosystems they visit, because the 50% of the charges that will be collected from the application will be then subsidized and given to NGOs that help us in our mission, which James will be talking about to you. How is our impact? Take the floor, James.
All right. So now let's first talk about our target market and how our app accommodates the demands. So our target market, of course, would be tourists like you are listening in our talk right now. And we do acknowledge that tourists want convenience in traveling. That is why, in response, Gaia has these all-round packages that will facilitate your travel preps. That means that you will have no more hassle, as shown in the interface earlier. But more importantly, all relevant information to reduce emissions in traveling are centralized already in the app. No wonder, based on our market survey with about 250 respondents last month, we we realize rather that almost all respondents need guidelines for carbon offsets and awareness on the emissions that are ongoing in the ecotourism sector. With keeping those in mind, we will be establishing partnerships with these institutions. First are these companies because they have showcased initiatives for ecosystem preservation or other means to mitigate climate change, such as transitioning to renewable energy and reducing waste. Next is, of course, the donors who will provide us initial capital. Um, these their goals as well align with those of the companies. But once we have accumulated enough capital, we are going to give back to our local communities via NGOs that have those community startup projects. And in tandem with those, of course, are local governments because they plan to craft and implement policies for these and ecosystem preservation goals to be set to action. Now, overall, we'd like to emphasize that our solution helps fulfill the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework with these impacts. First, of course, in the environmental sense, in the environment, we aim to reduce waste by 15 to 20%. That is why we seek to partner with the aforementioned institutions that try to regulate their extractions of natural resources and transition away from fossil fuels. Consequently, that preserves the ecosystem values that embody natural heritage and cultural identity. Why are those crucial? Because they entice tourists, they attract tourists to go to do these biodiversity hotspots or heritage sites. They then give economic value to ecotourism businesses via green jobs and more revenue for them. But of course, enough resources will help them give back to the environment and to the social realm via their preservation projects. Now we'll try to respond. Go, Matty.
All right, thank you so much for that, James. Now, you've seen the application, how its domestic and international roadmaps can guide the very tourist in protecting the ecosystems they visit while traveling. Now, let's situate that between the business side and the climate action side, specifically here in the country. All right.
All right. So we'll first ground everyone on the reality of climate change in the Philippines. So according to our research, the Philippines is the third world's most vulnerable country when it comes to anthropogenic climate change. Now, I would like to emphasize the word anthropogenic, that means human-made. So that comes from industrial activities. That's why, as mentioned earlier, corporations responsible for more emissions should be held accountable for compensating those. Thus, the polluter pays response. Add on to that as well, the geography of the Philippines. It's near the Pacific Ocean and the Pacific Ring of Fire. Thus, there will be more disasters that will hit the country. In response to that, the Philippines signed the following international agreements. First is the in line of the Rio Conference in 1992, two conventions, namely the Convention on Biological Diversity that seeks to preserve ecosystems, and the UNFCCC, which seeks to mitigate or reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt or bounce back from the long-term effects of anthropogenic climate change. In conjunction with those are two multilateral environmental agreements, namely the Kyoto Protocol, wherein the Philippines was, as a non-annex one or a developing country, was entitled to receive renewable energy projects based on the clean development mechanism. However, when it comes to the Paris Agreement, the Philippines, regardless of its economic status, is obliged to fulfill and self-report their nationally determined contributions to mitigate and adapt to climate change. No wonder in the domestic sphere, the Philippines legislated these following acts. The 1995 Mining Act, which seeks to regulate the extraction of resources, the 2008 Renewable Energy Code that seeks to transition away from fossil fuels, and most importantly, the 2009 Climate Change Commission, which actually sends delegations to the Conference of the Parties. Recently, they actually lobbied for funds for the Loss and Damage Fund.
Okay, so how will Gaia position itself in the Philippines? So first, a little backstory. Do any of you know Boracay Island from the Philippines? It's known for its white sand, great beaches. A lot of tourists go there. But did you know it had to be closed some years ago for half a year because the government noticed it's degrading. There's a lot of pollution. It had to be cleaned up. Local people, their economy, their businesses shut down, and they couldn't do anything about it. Well, of course, we had to there was a lot of tidying up, fixing up, and it was a hit on our economy, especially in our ecotourism economy, because in the Philippines, our ecotourism sector provides a lot of GDP for us. It's part of our great economic growth, and the private sector contributes a lot to that. And more than that, based on the NDCs of the Philippines in 2021, the private sector is the main engine of economic growth. In Metro Manila, 30% of the country's GDP is situated there. Now, these private sectors, these private companies, contribute a lot to waste. They pollute a lot of waste. If ordinary citizens have to ground themselves from drinking from paper straws, using recyclable glasses, it's also a part of the private sector to have that moral responsibility to give back, contribute a lot to this climate mitigation. So the Philippines recognized this. So apart from signing international frameworks and protocols, it translated into national policies that, for example, hotels must be able to abide. 50% of how the hotel runs have to be sustainable, and they have great gears for that, and the monitoring for that. Now, a lot of people don't know about the sustainability aspect of these hotels, these tourism spots, how flights can have low jet emissions. Now, that is where Gaia comes in. as we are the platform to showcase these sustainable actions and for people to access it easily. Because how can we make eco-conscious choices, eco-conscious decisions when we go travel around when we do not have the platform to do so? So that's our main role here as a mediator between consumers, users, and the companies. Now, if people will keep choosing Gaia with low emission options, with low waste options, it creates demand. More than it shifts behavior of consumers that translates into daily lives, it creates demand for these big companies to adopt more sustainable practices. If it creates demand, it becomes the trend for businesses. And that is where the money is. That is where you do not, if you're a business, you do not want to be left behind when you have trends, because that is where the people go and the money goes where the people goes. So that's our main economic driver, main business driver for Gaia. And to add on to that, Luke, you may take the floor.
So for the second part, Gaia enhances tourist awareness of the ecological footprint of their travels, thus encouraging them to offer low carbon activities and accommodation. So basically, the Filipino culture is very much loving of the nature, and they really want to preserve nature. And also, at the same time, Filipinos really love to travel around the country. Local tourism is a booming sector here, and Filipino people want that flat platform to mitigate their emissions or their environment impact, but at the same time enjoy traveling. So here is what Gaia's good, or Gaia's is useful. Gaia's is the mediator for all for all your activities, ensuring that you are safe and you are also putting a positive net impact on the environment. Now, for the third one, the Gaia app adopts a whole of government and society approach to partnerships to fulfill climate action as a collective moral responsibility. So the Filipino culture is also driven by this so-called bayanihan. I don't know if you've heard that. It is basically is to help each other. So Filipinos love a bayanihan style project that encapsulates the whole society to solve big problems with simple solutions like this one. And there's also called a bibingka strategy, wherein bibingka is a delicacy here in the Philippines, in which it is cooked with fire above and fire below. So the fire above in the bibingka strategy is represented as the top level government, in which the low level fire represents the people. So we are the bibingka, the Gaia is the bibingka that merges both levels of the society. In this case, we will pursue reforms in the top level, which is the government, and we will make people on the low level, the common Filipino people, to push for those changes and make impacts for the environment.
All right. Now, to wrap up everything, we will be summarizing the purpose of our product here. So we'd like to emphasize that Gaia is a norm entrepreneur. That means that we just don't sell products, we also sell ideas to establish the credibility of businesses and government actors. We already have seen that sustainable development as a norm has been established via the international agreements mentioned earlier. I would emphasize then on the norm cascade stage where we encounter this increasing pressure for businesses and governments to abide by sustainable development. Otherwise, they will be behind. That is why Gaia is coordinating with the partners earlier for them to fulfill the targets mentioned by the international frameworks. And hopefully, if all actors subscribe to that, the long-term goal is to make the norm of sustainable development be internalized in local communities. In fact, Gaia already seeks to internalize the habit of sustainable development to users, as shown in our interface earlier. And if this succeeds as well, that will also translate to more local laws implementing sustainable development for everyone, for a better world by 2030.
And that is all for our application, for our presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a lot. I have attached my LinkedIn page in the chat box. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity and time to present.
Thank you very much, Carbon Face Out team. Yeah, congratulations again on getting the award. You guys must be very nervous for yesterday event, but yeah, with that, I believe we have Miss Akiko already. I would like to invite her to give her opening speech. And with that as well, with Miss Flo as well. So, Miss Akiko, the floor is yours. While we were waiting for Miss Akiko, perhaps a quick introduction to you, Miss Akiko. She's the team leader for the energy and environment team over in UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub. And yeah, pleasure to have you here, Miss Akiko.
Hello, hi Joshua and everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joshua. And I'm very sorry that my apologies. I joined late, but at least I had a pleasure to enjoy the presentation from that carbon phase out. Great. Mr. Mr. Samin Nam from ESCAP, and then I can also see I saw now Aneta. Hi Aneta from ESCAP, and then Miss Flora Newman from UNFCCC, esteemed guests, and all the participants here joining us here today online. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you and my honor to share remarks on behalf of UNDP to this youth side event titled Meaningfully Engaging Youth in Climate Governance. I'm glad to be joined by colleagues from Youth Empowerment in Climate Action Platform, as we know as EACAP, ESCAP, and UNFCCC, RCC, Asia Pacific, and my fellow UNDP colleagues. This is the affirmation and testament of our collective commitment to supporting youth in their endeavor to build low-carbon, climate-resilient societies in the countries they live. I'd like to state share what difference we want to make here. According to a recent publication by UNDP, the involvement of young people in climate governance has not been a primary focus of many governments. 77.9% of youth reported never participating or being invited to contribute to formulating their country's nationally determined contributions, as known as NDC. 62.5% perceives the lack of contribution to the formulation of these NDCs as a structural issue. This gap in participation and contribution hinders our youth and future generations to actively participate as well as implement the NDCs and the priority actions included in the NDCs, which is a problem because they are the ones who will be facing with the impact of climate change. And they should be the ones providing solutions. And they should be the one who is developing and implementing all these solutions. Therefore, it is critical for decision makers to shift their mindset and see the value of meaningfully engaging with youth in these matters. Young people in Asia and the Pacific have expressed the need for capacity building and training to improve their quality of participation in both the formulation and implementation of NDCs. Through Climate Promise 2025 of UNDP, we should together ensure their increased involvement and they can fully voice their climate concerns and advise climate policy making. Let us just remind ourselves how far we have come and where we are now. To date, EACAP has engaged with over 1,100 youth in climate governance across the region who are trained and empowered to participate in the Asia-Pacific Climate Weeks, the UN Climate Change Conferences, including the COPs and beyond. And I would like to put an emphasis on the part that they are empowered and trained. It's not just they are sitting there in a room. It's very important that they are trained and engaged meaningfully. Now, where we want to go, how we plan to do it, and with whom. by reinforcing Sustainable Development Goals 13, climate action, and SDG 16, peace, justice, strong institutions, we can promote accelerated climate action and establish strong, inclusive institutions that fully value and integrate the perspectives of the youth. UNDP's On Equal Terms, a checklist for decision makers and practitioners on a youth-inclusive NDC process, offers recommendations to help government officials, policymakers, and climate practitioners in establishing a youth-inclusive process. 15 exemplary youth government engagement initiatives in the region can also be found in YECAP's Compendium of Best Practices. So where do we want to be in 1 year from now? While we have seen an increase in youth participation in such high-level spaces, we will continue to support youth in asserting their rightful role and participation in the climate governance space. And with this, we hope governments will create more platforms for them to partake in curating their country's NDCs and national adaptation plans. It will help increase accountability of those plans. It will also help hold all of us accountable for the implementation of those plans. And that will help all of us because we must accelerate climate action. This is the collective responsibility, all of us, to do everything possible before 2030. I thank you.
Thank you
Back to you,
very much,
Joshua.
Mr. Kiko. Yeah, with that, I would like to bring Miss Fleur from our colleague over in UNFCCC. She is the team leader for UNFCCC on ACE, youth and gender. Miss Fleur, if you're ready, the floor is yours. A quick remark. Yes, hello.
Sorry, just trying to unmute, having issues with technology this morning.
It's okay.
Thank you. You're not hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. No worries.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It is very early here in Bonn, but I was delighted to get up and listen. So I was very happy to have heard the presentation. And really, I think there's not a lot to add to what my dear colleague Akiko has just mentioned, other than to say that we, of course, are delighted to be partnering on the YACAP platform. And I think what has come out of that presentation, I think there's lots of things that that resonated with me. And one of those is around what the science is telling us, which is that the rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented changes are needed in all aspects of society in order for us to coexist with climate change and avoid its worst consequences. And the choices and actions implemented in this decade are going to have impacts now and for thousands of years. And I think that point about the need, it's a right, but it's also a need for effective climate policy and action to be informed by the ideas and perspectives and needs of young people. And YACAP is a platform in which we are both training and building capacity, but also building awareness. This is not only about building the capacity of young people to engage, but it's also about building the capacity of institutions to meaningfully include young people's perspectives and contributions to policy and action in this decade. But I'm going to leave it there because I think there's a lot more that is to be shared this morning. Yeah. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. for waking up very early at dawn over in Bonn to give your remarks. With that, without further ado, I would like to invite our 3 speakers today, and that session will be moderated by yours truly. Let me introduce our speaker for today's panel. We have first Amira Aisha, the State Assembly Member of Johor, Malaysia. We have Akhilesh Anil Kumar, Director and Co-founder of Bring Back Green Foundation, and Aneta Nikolova, Environmental Affairs Officer and Climate Policy Lead for the UNESCAP. So, guys, nice to see you, nice to see you again after APCW. And all of us here are friends. And I want to just quickly go into the question, and I want to bring you, Amira. During the APCW, since we're in the APCW conversation, I think Johor announced the Johor New Deal, very ambitious, which focused on 5 pillars: energy, transportation and mobility, land use and environment, water, low carbon cities and industry. So as someone who is young and sit at the executive committee of the climate change and environment in the Johor State Assembly, my first question for you is, how can Johor youth benefit in this Green Deal, and where can they help the state to realize this and eventually lead in this ambition?
Thank you so much, Joshua. You can hear my voice,
Yes, loud and
Amazing.
clear.
All right. Thank you so much. And first of all, thank you so much for inviting me today. Johor Green Deal is something that was newly introduced last year. However, actually, the process of making that Green Deal has been going on for several years. And I would say that it's new, but it's something that's long time coming. Like we should have had it even sooner. When I was elected in 2022, one of the first thing that I pushed for was actually for the state of Johor to establish what we call the Climate Change Committee. And it was established last year. So Johor Green Deal is one of the effort that we push for through the committee. And thank goodness it was also something that is aligned with the current government's mission for Johor. One of the most important thing to take note is in a country like Malaysia and actually many other countries, the youth population make up sort of like the biggest stakeholder in the country. For Malaysia, for example, youth make up about 45.8% of the population. That makes the young people as the biggest stakeholder that has a role to play, and also they are the ones who are most impacted by whatever policies that are being done by the state or by the country. When we look at the Green Deal, for example, we look at, there was a report made by McKinsey, if I'm not mistaken, was last year, that in 2030, there will be about 6 million new jobs that will be created that is tied to the green technology. So one of the things that I found very amazing about the Green Deal is that we're setting up this like sort of like a center, like a climate change center, to focus on how we can increase in terms of the educational and skill development of the young people in Johor specifically that focuses on green technologies. So I think one of the biggest things that the young people in Johor and also Malaysia or everywhere else around Johor can benefit from it is through this plan. Number one is, of course, we can all benefit whenever the country or the state goes to a more greener policy to take care of the earth, right? But secondly is that the creation of new jobs that focuses on green technology through the Green Deal will benefit the young people a lot. Now it's the task for the young people to then equip themselves with the necessary education and skill development, most importantly, TVET, and also any kinds of skill development that involves green technology. And secondly, I would also mention here is that one of the things that the young people can benefit and also can help the state in eventually realizing this ambition of the Green Deal is for them to start from the very beginning, from today, or even, even before the Green Deal was introduced, is to even organize a lot more entrepreneurship and innovation by the young people and initiatives by young people that focus on climate change and green technology. As young as when they were still in school, they don't have to wait until they're in the workforce, for example. I recently engaged with a school near Johor Bahru, which was actually my alma mater, Sultan Ibrahim Girls' School, and they established this new club called the Eco Warrior Club. And this club really pushes on the climate change, and they didn't only do these initiatives in their school, but they invited students from surrounding schools, even from the regions, to come and learn about climate change, and what has the Green Deal got to offer for the young people in Johor through their club, which I think is an excellent thing to do. We can learn from people like Greta Thunberg, for example, in terms of community outreach and awareness on how, if the young people are more aware about what's going on in terms of climate change, we can all benefit from it, and not just the young people. If I may just touch a little bit about, I know I was told that I should only answer this in 5 minutes, but just a little bit. I co-founded a party called Malaysian United Democratic Alliance. And one of the things that we champion for, the biggest thing that we champion for is for the young people to take up the decision-making positions in the country. That's the whole reason why we founded this party. But among our biggest pillar is about climate change. And this sort of example, in regardless whatever thing, young people should start getting organized when we talk about climate change. Of course, you can do it at your own personal level, but getting organized has always been the most effective way for you to push for change. And it doesn't mean that you have to start up your own political party. It can be an NGO, and it's still very, very effective in order to push for government to realize a certain policy or a certain ambition. But from Muda, we made it very clear from the very get-go that one of our biggest mission is about climate change, and we pushed for it through our manifesto, through all our campaigns, and also through our candidates and also our elected representatives. I think I've sort of given an overview about this whole thing within the time limit that I have. But if I may just, conclude all of it, I think the most important part about all of this is for the young people to take up decision-making position. I said this during the Climate Change Week. I mentioned that it's not enough for the young people to only be heard. We need to be the ones making the call, calling the shots, and it is our time, because at the end of the day, we are the ones who have to inherit this world, for better or for worse.
Thank you very much, Amira. Actually, you kind of answered the second question that I have for you by answering why Muda was created, in a sense where, in a space where political participation is very hierarchical, and then youth voices are not heard, and then Muda become a canvas for youth voice as a priority. And talking about youth voice as a priority, I would like to bring Akhilesh here, our friend from India, and he's someone who is a part of the younger working group, and having had the opportunity to organize the previous ALCOI. I talked to him during APCW and the things that he'd done in his local state, and eventually, recently I heard when he was in COP trying to submit the India ALCOI statement to his minister. Quite inspiring. So with that, actually, I want to go towards the first question for you, Akhilesh. So when you were organizing the ALCOI, can you walk us through the process? So did you receive any support from any local and national government? Were there any entity that supported you, and with human resource, technical knowledge, and more importantly, financial support? So yeah, if you can be short and concise, that'll be great.
Yes, thank you, Joshua, for having me here, and it's very lovely to meet everybody else who I met back in APCW Malaysia, Anita, Amira, Din, everybody else. So in terms of ALCOI, what's been happening in India is, so first of all, the context of ALCOI itself is the local conference of youth, for the people who don't know what ALCOI is, and it's an event that's given accreditation by Youngo, which is the official youth constituency of the UNFCCC. And last year, we had a record-setting 110 ALCOIs across the world, which means around 110 countries where young people hosted ALCOIs. And this is sort of a very amazing event, which young people, it's completely youth led, and young people come together in their countries to discuss as well as understand the challenges that they face on national level, as well as how to take it forward. In Indian context, we have been having LCOIs for I think couple of years before I did it, and all of them were concentrated in the northern region of India, and it was done by just one or two organizations that was keeping on doing it in rotation. And just the LCOI before us is when that sort of monopoly of all the people who are doing it kind of broke. And finally, there were more new empowered young organizations and young people who were ready to take up LCOI and ready to say, okay, we are ready to organize this as well. We have the capacity to organize something on this level. And then my organization, who along with one other organization, hosted LCOI in India last year. And from the onset of when we were planning the process, what we wanted to do was a clear engagement with local, regional, and national governments. And for us, this was something which was very important because you have an event, you bring upon young people, you bring young people to say their demands as well as what they're facing, what they want to do for the country, but then without actually intervention or support from various governance spaces, you can't take them forward. And this is why, for us, we hosted it in the state of Kerala in India, which was in the southern part of India, which usually have very less discussions in this space. And we brought in a government agency which focused on local governance, capacity building and local governance support, which is called the Kerala Institute of Local Administration. So we had them as our venue as well as our, big partner in terms of how they want to see us take shape of the LCOI as well as the statement, the discussions, and providing us with insights. But throughout this process, we still kept on making sure that the whole process was youth-led, and whatever inputs we received were, something in terms of just as an advice or, they're endorsing us. So we definitely had a local government partner there, but we were also looking at having a national level, support from the government as well, which I would say is very difficult, probably for India as well. And one of the things is we usually get to talk with our national representatives from every COP to the next COP. And, sometimes that discussions is lacking in the national level within our country itself, even when we try for those sort of discourses. So for several months, we tried to push with our national government and have some sort of support or involvement within our LCOI. And fortunately, by the end of the process of our LCOI beginning, we had the director of the Ministry of Climate Change speak at our event, as well as then with the support of agencies like UNICEF, we were able to lobby and advocate for having our statement that came out of LCOI to be pushed, to be recognized at the national level within the ministry itself. So the opportunity for that happened 2 months later in COP itself, where on the youth day of COP, we had an event with our minister as well as UNICEF directors and a lot of other representatives to hand over our statement as well as present our statement in front of the minister. And this was momentous for India, where we made a lot of progress through a channel like LCOI to actually, make suggestions or bring about our statement in the national level. So we had support on a local, state, as well as national level governance systems to actually take it forward. And this is something we empower other next time to be taken forward as well. And I think a lot of other countries did the same with their LCOI statements as well, which is very inspiring. And I know I might have crossed the time, but we just want to emphasize on the support by a couple of agencies where like UNICEF and some international agencies like Purpose were ready to fund and also support us with lobbying and policy advocacy support. But with HR, we were completely picking up volunteers and completely wanted it to be youth-led as well. So I think, yeah, that's kind of what we did with our LCOI process, but glad to answer more in depth on that as well.
Yeah, no worries. I think people are starting to brew their question. And also a quick reminder to everyone. We'll take maybe one or two questions from the audience. Please put your question in the chat box and also designate that question to each of the person. It can be all of them. It can be one person. So yeah, let's be quite specific in the question. With that, I would like to bring Miss Aneta. And because just now on team as well, Miss Akiko mentioned about the involvement of youth in meaningful youth engagement, and meaningful youth engagement is important. A lot of today's conversation center around that. And recently, a UNDP publication, it's a checklist for decision makers and practitioner on a youth inclusive NDC process. And here it was highlighted that 77.9% of youth involved in climate governance, they were never participated or invited to formulate their country's NDCs. So my first question to Anita, why is it important for youth to partake in their country's NDC formulation?
Thank you very much, Joshua. And I would like to thank also UNDP for developing this checklist, because it's a very important document and it's going to help all of us, all the UN agencies that are going to work as a team to help the countries to develop their new update of the NDCs, right? That's why it is important. We have a unique opportunity now. After COP28, decision was taken. The countries now have to work for the next 2 years to develop new cycles of NDCs. We call them NDC 3.0. Why? Because it should be now geared towards 2035 for reductions and should be much more ambitious. How to achieve this ambition? How to achieve this ambition when the NDCs in the past have been developed by kind of a selected group of people with quick modeling, and that's it. Did us, my colleagues, as Akiko knows very well, and UNFCCC colleagues know, vertical and horizontal coordination and involvement on the governmental level is very important. Now we're adding another layer. We've been working together with UNDP, UNEP, and UNFCCC for years to advocate for that, to bring, when we are doing this horizontal coordination, to bring also through some committees, some other processes, the youth, the private sector, the financial institutions, banking, national banks need to be part of it. We've done in the past some trainings. The banks didn't even know what the word NDC means. So this is so much work to be done. And in all this, on many levels, the youth can be a very useful partner to the government. How? Youth can collect data. Youth can design models and analyze this data, could help GHG emissions teams to have a better modeling. We heard with this lovely team that has developed a whole tool to show how the tourism sector can reduce emissions. These types of tools, I'm sure all the youth can very quickly develop. I see we're having even AI now in our Zoom chat to develop the report of this Zoom meeting. You guys come with so many fantastic ideas. You're the drivers, and I love the Amira's presentation about the political party you're creating. I love what Akhilesh is doing on the ground with the local governments. We need to replicate this millions of times, because Asian Pacific is where the 2/3 of the world youth is. And now is the time to engage them in the new NDC development and update. And they would come with a lot of ideas of how to tie it up with the net zero, with the long-term low emission development strategies of the countries, with concrete projects, concrete ideas that can quickly bring results, right? Quickly in the next 5 years, we could reduce emissions with certain sectors with practical projects and ideas from the youth. So that's how I see it. I applaud all of you, and I would like to give you all my energy and enthusiasm to get involved. And with the partners, we will work to make you more confident on how to approach the government. But here we see people who can share more how to do it.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I am waiting for all of the question over in the chat box. So while I wait for that, I actually have one more question for Amira. And this engulfs all of the two statements that Akhilesh and Miss Aneta mentioned. And because it is relatively difficult for a young person to be a part of a direct involvement in governance, and Muda certainly, from Set Sadek and then eventually with you, has shown that that is possible, and it's not only very traditional structured. And I was thinking when you are formulating or recommending a policy in your state assembly, how do you ensure that the youth, like how do you put it inside your psyche that okay, this has to be in. I'm trying to keep a youth interest over this policy, and do you see any resistance from I wouldn't say opposition, but from everyone when you are trying to get the youth interest first and foremost?
Thank you, Joshua. I think first and foremost, in terms of how do I ensure that in whatever I champion, be it in the state legislative assembly or outside of state legislative assembly, how do I ensure that the youth psyche is always in it? I think that comes naturally because I myself am a young person. So I just turned 29, and that makes it a natural thing for me to do. But most importantly, I think in the process of introducing new policy or pushing for something new, be it in the parliament, state legislative assembly, or even on social media, for myself and also for Muda, we always started with having sort of like a town hall, and that town hall goes within our political party, which is largely young people, and also with outside of political party. And I personally also always enjoy having town hall and spending more discussion and discourses with young people as young as when they were in high school, or even when they were even the primary school students, because I believe that this is something that Muda, we always believe in, right? The days where politicians know everything is over. Even for myself, even though I am a young person, I can't just assume that my opinion represents all the young people out there. And so we always prioritize the fact that we have to listen to what the people say first before we bring up this discussion to the next level. So having town hall before we start all our state legislative assembly or parliamentary sitting is extremely important to us. Number two, I think for us, in order to ensure that young people are being heard, it's not just a problem in Malaysia, right? It's everywhere else in the country, in the world, where people have this mindset that, young people, you're not mature enough, you don't know the reality of the world. There are a lot more challenges and hiccups and red tapes that you need to go through rather than doing all this. But I believe the most important thing for us to do is to continuously push for that change to happen. And I'm just going to be very frank here. I used to be an activist, but now I'm a politician. And although I'm still fighting for the same thing, but I've sort of looked at, currently I'm now looking at things from a different perspective, of a different viewpoint. But one thing I can ensure everyone here as a politician, especially in a democratic country, we really, really do care about what people think about us. And so if you get organized and push for something really hard, I take, for example, in our country, for example, the Undi 18, where we lower the voting age of the people to 18 years old. It has been started since the 80s. However, it only recently been gazetted because the young people in Malaysia were very angry about it, the fact that it hasn't been gazetted for so long, and they took it to the street, and I was one of them. We took it to the street to protest the government for not gazetting it yet. And being the fact that young people make up almost half of the population of the country makes it very difficult for the government to ignore the young people altogether, and you have to listen to the young people at the end of the day. But it takes consistency, it takes commitment, and it takes both soft and also sometimes hard diplomacy skills, right? And this is something that I'm sure many of you here, Akhilesh, for example, having your own organization, you've experienced it yourself. And really, if you prove that you're consistent enough, then they cannot just ignore your voice, because it matters to them. For politicians, it matters to us.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will take a round of question from the chat box. And actually two of the question right now is on climate education. It's quite long, but I'll try to shorten it a little bit and give it to Miss Aneta first, then Akhilesh. So to you, Miss Aneta. So one of the questions said climate focused education right from school is important to build climate consciousness among children. How can we ensure that this countries or region where poverty, quality of education, and low levels of literacy and school enrollment are significant to the hindrance? So how can we get climate focused education in our school?
Thank you very much, Joshua. My opinion is that we do not need expensive materials to do that, because nature is our biggest teacher. And the smaller the school, the more in the village area, the better for the children to create the link with the nature and the awareness that they need to preserve that. Once you keep the ecosystems intact, you don't cut the trees, you value and respect all the little bugs, then you're contributing to climate action. That's what the truth is, right? So we need more people to turn around, to be more inspired, and to give back to the community and to the children. And I am entering that group. I'm very excited. In 12 months, I'm leaving the UN and I'm going down to the field into my country to really do this with my grandchildren and with other children in the area there. I have this plan to set up a place where we could show examples. And we need more of that. We need every one of us to do that. You know, when we go to urban settlements, I was very impressed with Johor. Johor is so green. Even the highway has these big trees. And we don't see that much respect to trees in Thailand. And that's very sad. And I hope there's some young people participating in this side event from Thailand who are really inspired to help to keep the nature here. Sorry about this. My battery is running very low.
No worries. No
But
worries.
anyway, we do not need money and too much materials and expensive materials to do climate-oriented education. We all need to turn back to nature and to our mother nature to protect it.
Yes, thank you very much, Aneta. Before I continue to the next question, bringing Akhilesh, I remember that Amira is going to leave us at 1:40. So maybe with that, I'll just interrupt for a little bit for a quick picture taking as usual. So everybody open your camera and maybe someone from the BRH team can take the picture. Afa, perhaps.
Okay. On a count of three, please open your camera and smile. 1, 2, 3. Give 1 second, please. There are 4 pages.
It's okay.
Okay. 3. Okay.
1 page.
Done. Thank you.
Is that all? All right. Thank you very much. So yeah, Akhilesh, while they are putting us in the pin, I want to bring you because I remember we were having a conversation and you were mentioning that India textbook on science has been used by your sister science book has been used by you, which is 10 years your sister senior, and you said probably that book has been used another last 10 years, so altogether 20 years. And you mentioned they have to change and there have to be a more region-centric climate education. And yeah, because that conversation is just in silos between me and you. And I would like to, pick up your brain here and talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. It was the other way around. It was actually my sister who was using my textbook, but I was, let me see, I think around in 2015, 2016, the textbooks in science that I was using featured very less about environment. I think there was just one chapter on waste, and it's a similar when you go higher into, let's say, 11th and 12th or your final grades in high school as well, where the textbooks feature very less information on climate change, and the very less context that you get is on biodiversity and waste management. And the issue with climate education that's lacking in formal education systems in India, how I draw the contrast or show the difference is through, like I said, the textbook which I used in 2015 was of my seniors who was 2 years older than me. And I preserved that textbook. And now my sister, who was 6 years younger than me, is used the same textbook 2 years ago, and it's still the same content. There's nothing changed. And you don't expect that from something like climate change, which is very much evolving. And over the, let's say, 1 decade, you have seen tremendous amount of change that has happened of information, which is lacking for, the young children who's growing up. And for this, just when I got out of college, it's a school. One of the biggest frustration I was trying to deal with is how to make climate education much more better. And we tried it through different methods with my organization. We experiment different education tools as well as working with children of all ages, and found out that the best age to work with is actually between 4 to 8 years old. And the retention of whatever we are trying to communicate, as well as the conversion of whatever climate education material that we are providing them, actually stayed within this age group, and they actually took it for a longer period of time. But it's a bit more difficult as you grow older. And another interesting thing that we found is how the climate education sphere would be much better if the teachers has a better context or understanding of what you're teaching. And if they have that context, no matter if you don't even have that in the curriculum, even if they're teaching any subject, let's say even mathematics, they can do put out climate education without that content in the textbook itself. It's just the lack of context within the teachers which it leads to a lot of issues, that even if you have content and the teachers don't really understand or perceive the urgency of whatever we are dealing with, it's very difficult to have that communication take place. So it's definitely at first coming where the formal education system should promote very rigorous and updated teacher training and capacity building, which we experimented with around 250 teachers, and found out as an individual or a trainer in climate education, maybe I could reach 100 students, but one single teacher could reach 1,000 students.
Exactly.
And that happens in different batches year around, that keeps on growing. So, in that sort of sense, teachers really have to change and not change, but they also came through the same system of education where they were not sensitized to the urgency of climate education itself. So I think that's one thing that's very important, something that we noticed. And another thing, definitely we need extracurricular or external education materials, where a lot of tools, companies, a lot of people are trying to bring climate education as a necessary add-on. But what we pushed for and in through our government's what is it, education ministries here, and what I would encourage a lot of other people to also do is to actually try to push, lobby, and advocate for changes in your formal education curriculum. And sometimes maybe the government might not have the capacity to actually make that change. They might have, but they might not be doing it. But that's where young people can come as people who can handhold these government agencies to make that transition happen. Where you could put out draft curriculums, or put out your case studies, success stories of how your interactions with young people went. And yeah, I could speak on this for a very long period of time, but then I think that gives a bit of context on the question.
Thank you very much. I think yeah, we're about to end. I think that's nice. Thank you very I think you mentioned education, and then I like that eventually you mentioned the role of teacher in educating. And in order to meaningfully engage, youth also need to understand what are they trying to bring forward, right? Because in the checklist as well, one of the grievances that the youth mentioned was that they sometimes are intimidated in involving in the official spaces, or and sometimes the technical word is too complex, and sometimes they just are afraid to make mistake. But that shouldn't be the case, right? So thank you very much. That's the last Q&A session slash panel. With that, I would like to invite Miss Julie. That will be the last Q&A session. Miss Julie is the Regional Collaboration Center for ASEAN and the Pacific Regional Lead. And the floor is yours, Miss Julie.
Thank you very much, Joshua, and hello, everyone. It's been a pleasure sitting here and listening to your active engagement on this side event. So on behalf of the UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center for Asia and the Pacific, and at the same time as one of the conveners for YECAP, together with UNDP and UNICEF, I'm really thankful for these active and I would say meaningful engagement that we are doing here in terms of talking to the youth. And I would also like to congratulate the proponents of the of Gaia, the carbon phase out team, for winning the Youth Climathon. And also thank you so much for that very interesting presentation. Coming from the Philippines, myself, I can situate, and that the presentation resonates so much to me, and I'm really excited of that, of the potential of Gaia in terms of informing the the climate action at the national level for the Philippines. Again, it has been a very excellent engagement. I could not really add more in terms of the richness of the conversation, but allow me to maybe give you some three takeaways from my side. One is in terms of the amount of efforts that are there. I'm really impressed of the the level of engagement that the youth in the region has been showcasing. The example from Amira, for instance, the example from Akilish. I think this gives us different flavors of how the youth can really engage meaningfully. Amira, coming from an activist perspective and then moving to the policymaking side, gives us a concrete example that it's really possible, to use positive disruption and then make it more sustainable by being part of the conversation and really going through the policy making stages. So that to me was very positive and indeed a very excellent example for the I think for the next steps that YECAP is trying to also develop and showcase. So platforms such as the YECAP, for instance, continue to provide that space for bridging the gap between the different stakeholders, the policymakers, the youth, for instance, including the marginalized youth. And I'm really looking forward to duplicating, what YECAP is doing in terms of highlighting and putting a spotlight on these examples, because this is what we need. We've gone beyond. Akiko already mentioned that we've gone beyond just talking about let's engage the youth. But this time around, you're already showcasing that the youth can actually be co-creators in the solution, which is also my second point. Yeah. We are now looking into co-creating solutions, with policymakers, with the different stakeholders in the region. And we're not just making a motherhood statement that says that, oh, we're engaging youth, but we are showcasing examples that youth are actually part of, co-creating solutions, and that they are not just being informed, but in fact being consulted. And we are showcasing that the youth are bridging bringing in their fresh ideas, their new insights, and the right behavior and mindset to move the dial. So that for me is also a very concrete message from these side event. The third is inclusivity and accountability. We all heard from the different speakers, that being included in the process also increases the accountability of the process. So if the youth will be part of the conversation in terms of the national adaptation plans and developing the NDCs, the second round of NDCs, we know that the accountability of that, commitments and targets will also be higher because everyone has a stake on it. So those are my 3 points. And but in terms of maybe moving forward, let me just briefly also share with you that the UNFCCC, again, as part of the YECAP, commits to continue this collaborative platform and collective action that we've started here in the region. The UNDP, UNICEF, UNFCCC, I think, have its own convening power, and by bringing them together makes it more powerful to inform the different processes at the international level, at the regional level, and at the national level. And lastly, I think the timing at the moment is very, we are on point in terms of the timing, because again, as Aneta mentioned earlier, the second round of NDCs is actually due for submission by next year, by March of 2025. And this opens up a clear entry point for the youth to be very proactive, be vigilant, and look out for for these processes that to ensure that you're not just one of those participants being picked as consulted, but really engaging in a manner that you put your voice on the table, and then you provide that that you showcase the skills and the capability and showing that you are indeed equipped to be part of the conversation. I have so many more thoughts to share, but I will stop it here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with everyone. And again, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Julie, for the closing remark. Just a very quick announcement. Thank you to all of the partners, UNESCAP, UNDP, UNICEF, as convener for YECAP, and also RCC, Asia and the Pacific, for working together on making this event possible. And I also like to invite the people over here to join the Movers Climate Governance WhatsApp community. So this is a community where if you want to really share about the governance and maybe opportunity on the governance field, you can join. I'll be sharing it over in the email chain later. And finally, YECAP Climate Week and YECAP Regional Dialogue will also be coming up in April, and there's a specific session that is going to touch on the NDC checklist, and this will also be the person who are involved will also be the person who co-wrote the report and publication. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for making their time, the speakers as well, for clearing their schedule in this session. It's very exciting times. It's nice to know that the trajectory of meaningful youth engagement is moving upward, like what Jeta is mentioning. So with that, thank you very much. I'll let you go for your lunch and enjoy the rest of the side event. Bye-bye.